I spoke to Ukraine's President Zelenskyy today in an NBC News exclusive interview with the help of a Ukrainian government-provided interpreter. I'd like to begin by asking you the status of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. There's been some reporting that the framework of a deal is being hammered out, one in which you would renounce NATO ambitions, declare neutrality, not allow foreign militaries to base on your land. Can you confirm any of that and update us on the status of negotiations?
Well, thank you for this question, Lester. First of all, the negotiations are still in progress. The negotiations are fairly difficult, and the current conditions of negotiation, I would say, it continues. Any war could be finished at the table of negotiations.
You delivered a very passionate speech to Congress. You once again renewed your call for a no-fly zone. As you know, that's a non-starter in this country. But you also made the pitch for an alternative, and that's the fighter planes. Do you think that President Biden is inching closer to perhaps reconsidering transferring fighter planes to Ukraine?
Well, this is the choice for the President Biden to take, and the whole civilized world would need to take. And hopefully, that choice would coincide with the choice of the Ukrainian people, because currently Russia has an advantage in the air. Our partners can support us from the standpoint of supporting and supplying of those aircraft.
President Biden has been very clear he's worried about provocations that could trigger World War III. Do you understand his concern there, and do you agree that it wouldn't take much to end up in World War III?
Well, nobody knows whether it may have already started, and what is the possibility of this war if Ukraine will fall, in case Ukraine will fall. It's very hard to say, and we've seen this 80 years ago when the Second World War has started, and there were similar tragedies in the history. Nobody would be able to predict when the full-scale war would start and how it will end and who will put an end to that. In any case, the wars tend to end up in millions of people lost. People die, and millions of buildings destroyed. Now we have different technologies, nuclear weapons. In this case, we have the whole civilization at stake.
The U.S. administration has raised concerns that Russia might launch a chemical attack. Do you think there is a red line, and whether that would be a red line that the U.S. would move forward and become more actively involved in combat?
I believe that Russians have already crossed all the red lines when they started shelling civilians. They've killed over 100 of children, and I don't understand the meaning of red lines. What else should we wait for? For letting Russians kill 200, 300, or 400 children?
And then I asked him about the fate of Ukraine's capital, the city where he still is tonight, with the Russian onslaught intensifying.
If Kyiv falls to the Russians, does the entire country of Ukraine fall to the Russians?
Well, our people are unconquerable, and this is what our people have clearly demonstrated. You can conquer the city, you can break the heart, but you won't be able to force anyone to love someone. That is why the heart will always remain with the Ukrainians.
President Zelenskyy hosted 3 European leaders this week. I asked him whether he has invited President Biden. He replied he would be happy to do so. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.